I'd been working since I was 16, never asked anyone for a dime, and even paid for my own education. I bought my first home all on my own, and then got sued by my parents for stealing my sister's future. Can you even imagine working your entire life, scraping by, sacrificing everything to build a future for yourself, only to have your own parents try to rip it all away? Because that's exactly what happened to me. The day I finally got the keys to my very first home, a moment that should have been pure pride, instead became the day I found myself staring at court papers. Papers that said my mom and dad were suing me for 70% of my house, claiming I'd stolen my sister Emma's future. I'm Amanda, and I'm 29 now. But my story of fighting for myself really started when I was just 16. From that age, I worked every single job I could get my hands on. I put myself through college, paid off my student loans down to the last penny, and finally, saved enough for a down payment on a small house. This house, it was meant to be the proudest moment of my life, a symbol of everything I'd overcome. Instead, it became the battleground. Growing up in Minneapolis, our family of 4 probably looked pretty normal on the surface. My dad, John, was an insurance adjuster, my mom, Karen, a part-time dental receptionist. Then there was me and my sister Emma, 8 years younger. But behind the closed doors of our modest suburban home, money was this dark, constant cloud. Arguments about finances filled the air, bills piled up, and hushed conversations would suddenly stop whenever I walked into the room. We weren't poor, not really. Looking back, it was more about terrible financial management than a lack of income. But what truly stung, even as a kid, was how differently my parents treated Emma and me. From the beginning, Emma was the special one. Emma has natural talent, they'd say. Emma could really be somebody someday. For me, the message was loud and clear. Even if they never said it directly, I was ordinary, average. Nothing special to invest in. By 14, I'd absorbed it. I became the practical, responsible one. I started helping our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, after school, doing chores for $10 an hour. That was my first taste of real independence, and I used it for school supplies, clothes, little treats. My parents never asked where the money came from. They just seemed relieved they didn't have to provide. When I turned 16, I landed my first real job at Sweet Dreams Bakery. I'd walk there right after school, work until 7:30, then head home to start my homework. Diane, the owner, she was incredible. A true mentor. She taught me about baking, sure, but also about customer service, inventory, and, most importantly, saving. The day I got my first paycheck, I was buzzing. I was going to open a savings account. Dreamed of college, of independence. But then, my dad sat me down at the kitchen table. Now that you're earning money, he said, sliding a calculator towards me, you need to contribute to the household. 30% of your earnings comes to us for rent, food, and utilities. I just stared, completely blindsided. But, Dad, I stammered, I'm only 16. I thought I should be saving for college. My mom just laughed from the doorway. Amanda, be realistic. With your grades, you'd be better off learning a trade. Besides, Emma will need a college fund. She has a real future ahead of her. That 30% rule stuck. Every single paycheck, 30% gone. Meanwhile, Emma got piano lessons at $200 a month, ballet classes 3 times a week. Her room was redecorated with beautiful new furniture, while I still had the same twin bed from childhood. My routine was brutal. School, work, homework until midnight. Weekends meant double shifts. Summers were full-time at the bakery, no teenage freedom for me. And if I dared to buy something new for myself? Another new shirt, Amanda? You should be more responsible with your money. This from the woman who'd just dropped $300 on a ballet costume for Emma. The irony was suffocating. Junior year, I secretly picked up a second job at the library on weekends. I told my parents it was for extra spending money, but really, it was my hidden college fund. The pay was less, but it offered something priceless. Quiet hours to study. My grades soared. Mrs. Peterson, who'd become like a grandmother, noticed my exhaustion. Amanda, dear, you're working yourself to the bone, she said one day, pouring me hot chocolate. What are you saving for that requires so much sacrifice? When I explained, tears welled in her eyes. Your parents should be supporting your dreams, not the other way around. From then on, she slipped me extra money, insisting I put it directly into my college fund. By senior year, I had a 3.8 GPA despite my insane schedule and nearly $8,000 saved. My guidance counselor championed me, helping me apply for scholarships and financial aid, believing in me when my own family didn't. When acceptance letters rolled in, my parents seemed more annoyed than proud. College is expensive, my dad warned. Don't come crying to us when you can't afford it. I promised I wouldn't. I never had. State University with a partial academic scholarship. It was a mix of pride and sheer terror. The scholarship covered 60% of tuition, but the rest, plus room and board, still needed to be paid. My $8,000 would barely cover the first year. My parents' reaction was predictable. State University? That's expensive for what it is, my dad grumbled over dinner, not even looking up. We can't help you with that. I'm not asking for help, I shot back. I have my scholarship and savings. I'll figure out the rest. My mom sighed dramatically. I don't understand why you need to go at all. You have a perfectly good job at the bakery. Diane would probably make you assistant manager. Because I want more than that, Mom. I want a career, not just a job. Then, my dad delivered the kicker. And what about your contribution to this household? How are we supposed to make up that shortfall? It was in that moment, the pieces clicked into place. The 30% wasn't about teaching me responsibility. It was about propping them up, funding Emma's activities. I wasn't a daughter being guided towards independence. I was an income source. Period. I'm sorry, but I'm going to college, I said, my voice shaking with a resolve I didn't know I had. I've worked for this opportunity, and I'm taking it. The weeks leading up to my departure were filled with icy glares and passive-aggressive comments. They acted like I was abandoning the family. Only Emma, at 11, seemed genuinely happy, though she didn't fully grasp the tension. Move-in day? I was alone. My parents couldn't take time off. So, I packed my life into suitcases and took the bus. My roommate, Jennifer, arrived with her entire family, who decorated her side of the room. I unpacked my secondhand sheets and a single framed photo of Emma and me in silence. That first night, listening to Jennifer on the phone with her parents, I cried into my pillow. Not because I missed my family, but because I finally saw how fundamentally abnormal my relationship with them truly was. College was a financial brutal reality check. Even with the scholarship, it was overwhelming. I found a serving job within my first week, 5 to 11 p.m. on weekdays, straight from classes, then study until the early morning. Weekends were double shifts, leaving me too exhausted to socialize. Sophomore year, I added. A second job as a teaching assistant. The pay was minimal, but it looked good on my resume. I managed to avoid excessive loans, though I still borrowed about $10,000 a year. My tiny dorm room became both sanctuary and prison. My desk lamp burned until 3 or 4 a.m. Cup noodles were my primary food source, not for the cliché, but because they cost less than $1 a meal. I meticulously tracked every penny. Jennifer eventually moved out, claiming my late-night studying was disrupting her sleep. Jessica, another scholarship student who also worked, replaced her. Jessica got it. My parents help when they can, but there are 5 kids, she explained. I'm the first to go to college, so I'm kind of the experiment. At least they support you emotionally, I said, the bitterness slipping out. Jessica looked at me thoughtfully. Your family situation sounds really toxic, Amanda. Have you ever talked to someone about it? Like a therapist. I just laughed. With what time or money? Therapy's a luxury I can't afford. Despite the grind, I excelled academically. My finance and business classes felt so relevant, so practical. Professors noticed my work ethic, and one recommended me for a summer internship at Meridian Financial Services after my junior year. That internship was a turning point. For the first time, I was in a professional environment where my contributions were valued. My supervisor, Michael, was impressed. The pay was more than both my other jobs combined, giving me a small cushion for senior year. Throughout college, communication with my parents was minimal and almost always about money. They rarely called to check on me. Calls usually started with casual chat before inevitably turning into requests. Emma needs new point shoes, $200. The fridge broke, $400 for repairs. Emma got into a special music camp, $2,000. I sent money when I could justify it as helping Emma, not enabling my parents. But each request chipped away at me, leaving me feeling used, not loved. Senior year, I met Tyler in an advanced finance seminar. Smart, kind, from a loving family, everything I hadn't experienced. When he invited me home for Thanksgiving, I saw, for the very first time, what a supportive family looked like. His parents asked about my classes, my goals, my opinions. They were genuinely interested in me. "Why are you crying?" Tyler asked, finding me alone in the guest room that night. "Because I didn't know families could be like yours," I admitted. "I didn't know parents could love their children without conditions." That weekend fundamentally shifted my perspective. I finally understood that my experience wasn't normal or healthy. And most importantly, I realized I deserved better. I graduated with honors, a bachelor's in finance. No one from my family came to the ceremony. Emma wanted to, but my parents claimed they couldn't afford the 3-hour drive. Michael, my internship supervisor, offered me a full-time position at Meridian Financial Services, $50,000 a year. It felt like an astronomical sum. Most of my colleagues rented apartments in trendy neighborhoods. I opted for a tiny studio in an older building, 45 minutes by public transport. The rent was only 20% of my take-home pay, allowing me to focus on my next goals, paying off loans and saving for a house. I made a detailed 5-year plan. My lifestyle remained super frugal. Lunch from home, discount grocery stores, public transport. I declined happy hours and weekend trips, knowing each $60 dinner would delay my goals. Jessica remained my closest friend, understanding my drive. Most people our age aren't thinking about retirement accounts or mortgage rates. She laughed one evening over cheap pizza. Most people our age didn't have to pay rent to their parents at 16, I replied. Tyler and I remained friends. He respected my financial goals, but struggled with my intensity. "You deserve to enjoy life now," he'd argue. "Not just prepare for some future that might never come." "I am enjoying life," I'd insist. Financial security is worth more to me than temporary pleasures. We eventually decided to remain friends, a painful choice, but it let me stay focused. At work, my dedication paid off. Within 18 months, I was promoted to financial analyst, salary $62,000. I maintained my frugal habits, funneling the extra income straight to my student loans. By the end of my 3rd year, my $40,000 in loans were paid off, I had a $12,000 emergency fund, and I was seriously saving for a house down payment. The accomplishment felt monumental. Yet, there was no one in my family who truly understood the significance. Our family relationship remained strained. The pattern from college continued, rare communication, and less money was involved. Emma was in high school now, excelling in music. My parents still spoke of her potential with the same reverence. "Emma's piano teacher thinks she could get into Juilliard," my mom announced during an infrequent call. Of course, the application process and audition prep will be expensive. The unspoken request hung heavy. I'd already sent $3,000 that year for Emma's various activities. Each time, I told myself it was for her, not for them. But the line was blurring. "Mom, I have my own financial goals I'm working toward," I said carefully. "I can't be Emma's college fund." The silence on the other end was frigid. "I see your sister's future means nothing to you now that you have your fancy job and city apartment." The guilt trip. Familiar, but this time, something in me resisted. That's not fair. I've helped a lot over the years, but I can't be expected to finance another person's education when I just finished paying for my own. The call ended badly, my mother accusing me of being selfish, cold. It hurt, but I held my boundary. 2 weeks later, my father called with a more direct approach. Emma got accepted to Westfield University. Full 4-year tuition is $40,000 per year. We need to know how much you can contribute. Westfield was a prestigious private university known for its arts and astronomical costs. I was stunned, both by the assumption and the amount. Dad, that's over $160,000 total. I don't have that kind of money to give. You make good money now. You could take out a loan to help your sister. That's what family does. The irony was not lost on me. Family helps each other when they can. No one helped me with my education. That was different. You were always independent. Because I wasn't given a choice, I retorted. The conversation dissolved into accusations, old resentments. He hung up after telling me I was breaking my mother's heart with my selfishness. Despite the emotional toll, I stuck to my plan. When Emma herself called to ask about college funding, I took a different approach. I can't pay your tuition, Emma. But I can help you apply for scholarships, look into more affordable schools, and teach you how to manage money so you can be independent, like I had to be. Her response genuinely surprised me. I never asked them to put this on you, Amanda. I know how hard you worked for everything you have. That was the first genuine connection I'd felt with my sister in years. We started talking regularly, me serving as a sounding board and advisor. I helped her apply for scholarships and financial aid, and she got a substantial package from a state university comparable to mine. My parents were disappointed, seeing it as settling. They kept pressuring me for contributions, which I earmarked specifically for Emma's textbooks or dorm supplies. By my 5th year at Meridian, now a senior financial analyst earning $78,000, I had saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest home. Years of sacrifice were about to pay off in the form of the stability I'd craved since childhood. What I didn't anticipate was how my family would react to this milestone, or how their reaction would change everything. House hunting was both exhilarating and terrifying. A small, well-maintained home, safe neighborhood, good public transport, under $250,000. My agent, Natalie, was patient. Most first-time buyers your age are looking for condos or continuing to rent, she commented. It's impressive you're in a position to buy a house outright. I smiled, feeling a rare moment of pure pride. I've been working toward this since I was 16. Finally, we found it. A 1920s bungalow with 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a functional kitchen, tiny backyard. $220,000. Perfect. The inspection was clear, the location ideal. Signing the mortgage papers was surreal. I'd planned for this moment for years, but I could barely believe it was happening. The loan officer even remarked how unusual it was to see someone my age with such a solid financial foundation. Most people your age have minimal credit history and mountains of student debt, he said. I paid off my student loans 3 years ago, I replied, unable to keep the pride from my voice. The day I got the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room of my new home, just overcome with emotion. This house wasn't just a financial investment, it was a psychological one. It was tangible proof that I had overcome my upbringing, that I could provide for myself the security my parents never had. Jessica and Tyler helped me move in, bringing housewarming gifts and champagne. We sat on the floor, eating pizza, as I hadn't even bought furniture yet. To Amanda, Jessica toasted, raising her plastic cup, who worked harder than anyone I know to get here. To having roots, Tyler added. Something you deserve more than anyone. After settling in for a few weeks, I decided it was time to invite my family over. Despite our strained relationship, this was a milestone I genuinely wanted to share. Perhaps, I thought, naively, seeing my success would finally make them proud. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon. My father critically eyed the exterior as they walked up the path. "It's small," was his first comment upon entering. "Perfect size for me," I replied, trying to keep a positive tone. My mother walked through the rooms with an expression of faint distaste. "This neighborhood isn't very upscale, is it?" "It's safe and convenient to my office," I explained. Emma, now in her 2nd year of college, seemed genuinely happy. "I think it's awesome, Amanda. You worked so hard for this." I had prepared lunch, hoping to create a pleasant atmosphere, maybe a new chapter. As we sat at my new dining table, the conversation stayed superficial. Then my mother set down her fork and cleared her throat. "Emma has some news she needs to share." Emma looked down at her plate, clearly uncomfortable. I might have to take a break from school next semester. What? Why? I asked, instantly concerned. The scholarship I had wasn't renewed, she explained quietly. And my student loan application was denied because of Dad's credit score. We've had some financial setbacks, my father said defensively. Medical bills, car repairs, you know how it is. So, what's the plan? I asked, already sensing where this was heading. Well, my mother began, her tone shifting to one I recognized all too well. We thought, given your new purchase, that you must be in a very comfortable financial position. I just bought a house. I'm not exactly flush with cash right now, but surely you must have savings left. Or you could take out a home equity loan, my father suggested. Emma needs about $20,000 for this year. I stared at them, completely aghast. I used all my savings for the down payment, and I am not going to borrow against my house that I just bought. So you're just going to let your sister drop out of college? My mother's voice rose. After all we've done for you. The sheer absurdity of her statement left me speechless for a moment. What exactly have you done for me? I've been working and supporting myself since I was 16. I paid for my own education. I bought this house entirely on my own. We raised you, my father said indignantly. We put a roof over your head. A roof I paid rent for as a teenager. I countered. The argument escalated rapidly. My parents accused me of being selfish, of forgetting where I came from, of abandoning family in their time of need. I pointed out the years of financial support I'd already provided, the lack of support I'd received, the sheer unfairness of expecting me to mortgage my future for Emma. You've always been jealous of the attention Emma received, my mother declared. This is your way of punishing her for being more talented. This has nothing to do with Emma. I insisted. This is about boundaries and reasonable expectations. Emma, who had been silent, finally spoke up. Please stop fighting. I'll figure something out. I can take a semester off and work full-time to save money. Absolutely not, my mother snapped. You are not throwing away your future because your sister is too selfish to help. I turned to Emma directly. I can help you look into additional scholarship options, or maybe work-study programs. There are alternatives to dropping out or going into massive debt. The only alternative is for you to step up and do the right thing, my father insisted. Family takes care of family. I have been taking care of this family financially since I was a teenager. I said, my patience finally exhausted. I am done being your ATM. My father stood up abruptly. If that's how you feel, then perhaps we need to reconsider what family means. You clearly have the resources to help, but are choosing not to. This house represents years of sacrifice and hard work, I said. I am not jeopardizing that. That house should be helping secure Emma's future, not sitting here as a monument to your selfishness, my mother declared. As they prepared to leave, my father delivered a parting shot that would prove prophetic. This is not over, Amanda. If you won't do the right thing voluntarily, there are other ways to ensure family obligations are met. I assumed it was an empty threat, a dramatic statement. I was wrong. 3 weeks after that disastrous visit, an envelope arrived from the county court. Inside was a summons. My parents, John and Karen Collins, were suing me for 70% of the value of my home, approximately $154,000. The legal complaint alleged I had a moral and implied financial obligation to support my sister's education and that my house purchase constituted financial abandonment and theft of family resources. It actually used the phrase stealing her sister's future to describe my home. I sat on my living room floor, papers scattered around me, unable to process it. This couldn't be real. Parents don't sue their children over money. They don't drag family disputes into courtrooms. But the official seal and case number confirmed it. This was no joke. My hands shook as I dialed their number, hoping this was some elaborate scare tactic. My father answered. Yes, Dad. I just received court papers. Are you and Mom actually suing me? We are simply seeking what is fair, he replied, his tone eerily calm. You refused to help your sister voluntarily, so we are pursuing legal means. This is insane. You can't possibly think a court will force me to give you my house money. Our lawyer thinks we have a case based on family obligation and implied contract. You benefited from family resources growing up. Now you owe a return on that investment. The conversation became surreal. Dad, please. This will destroy any relationship we still have. That is your choice, Amanda. Do the right thing and we can put this behind us. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for an hour before calling Jessica. She arrived 30 minutes later with wine and pure determination. This cannot be legal, she insisted, reading the documents. They can't just claim a right to your house. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in my career and started searching for a lawyer. By noon, I had an appointment with Linda Cohen, a family law attorney. Linda's office was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to my cold reality. After reviewing the documents, she looked up at me with a mix of sympathy and professional assessment. I've seen some contentious family disputes in 20 years, but parents suing a child for buying their own home is certainly unique. She reassured me, their case has virtually no legal merit. They cannot actually take 70% of your house. There's no legal principle that would entitle parents to their adult child's assets based on an implied obligation to a sibling. The problem? Defending yourself will still cost money and emotional energy. We discussed strategy. I needed to gather evidence of my financial independence, tax returns showing I hadn't been a dependent since 18, proof of paying for my own education, and documentation of all the money I'd already given them. Their case hinges on the idea that you owe them something. We need to demonstrate that if anything, the balance is tilted in the other direction. The next few weeks were a blur of legal prep, anxiety, and disrupted sleep. My work performance suffered, but my supervisor, Michael, noticed. When I finally explained the situation, his reaction validated what I was slowly realizing. Amanda, what your parents are doing is not normal. It is exploitative and abusive. Hearing someone in authority name the dynamic so clearly was both painful and liberating. I'd spent so many years normalizing their behavior, making excuses, taking blame. Now, outsiders were confirming what I'd only recently begun to acknowledge. My relationship with my parents was fundamentally unhealthy. Support came from unexpected places. Colleagues offered encouragement. Neighbors, hearing snippets, brought meals. Even Tyler, despite our complicated history, became a steady presence, helping me organize records, providing emotional support. Jessica urged me to find a therapist. This is trauma, Amanda. You need professional support. I found Dr. Russell, specializing in family estrangement and financial abuse, who offered sliding scale fees. Our sessions helped me recognize patterns of manipulation and unravel the guilt instilled in me since childhood. Your parents created a narrative where your role was to provide, not to be provided for, Dr. Russell explained. Children are not supposed to be financial assets to their parents. That reverses the natural order of nurturing. As the court date neared, I got an unexpected call from Emma. We hadn't spoken since the disastrous lunch. Amanda, I just found out about the lawsuit, she said, her voice shaking. I had no idea they were doing this. I never asked them to sue you. You didn't know? I asked, surprised. No, I would never want this. I'm so sorry they're putting you through this. Her call reinforced what Linda had advised, separate my feelings about Emma from my parents. Emma was as much a victim of their dysfunctional expectations as I was, just in a different way. The lawsuit consumed my thoughts, invaded my dreams. Nightmares of becoming homeless, of judges ordering me to hand over my house keys. During the day, I obsessively checked my bank accounts, calculating how I'd survive if I lost. Linda reassured me repeatedly. The law simply doesn't work the way your parents think it does. Still, the mere existence of the lawsuit felt like a profound violation. My home, meant to be security, was a source of anxiety. My parents, who should have celebrated, were trying to take it from me. Linda helped me gather evidence of my financial contributions, bank statements showing transfers totaling over $15,000 to my family over the past decade. Emma provided a written statement confirming she hadn't asked for or expected my financial support. We have a strong case, factually and legally, Linda assured me the night before court. Try to get some rest. Rest was impossible. I contemplated facing them across a courtroom, our private dysfunction on public display. The final severance of what little connection remained felt both inevitable and devastating. The county courthouse was an imposing stone building. I arrived early with Linda, dressed in a conservative navy suit, hoping to project confidence I didn't feel. We set up at the defendant's table. "Remember, speak only when addressed by the judge," Linda reminded me. "Let me handle the arguments." My parents arrived with their attorney, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. They didn't acknowledge me. My mother stared straight ahead. My father whispered to their lawyer. The physical proximity, yet emotional distance, was surreal. Judge Harriet Wilson entered. Silver hair, an expression that suggested she'd seen everything. "I have been on the bench for 17 years, she began, looking over her reading glasses at us, and I must say, this is one of the more unusual family disputes I have encountered. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, you are suing your daughter for 70% of the value of her home to pay for your younger daughter's college education. Is that correct?" My parents' lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. My clients believe their elder daughter has a moral obligation to support her sister's education, particularly given the family's financial contributions to her upbringing." Judge Wilson's expression remained neutral, but her tone sharpened. "Moral obligations and legal obligations are not always the same thing, counselor. Please explain the legal basis for your claim." What followed was a tortured argument about implied family contracts and conditional support during minority, claiming that by accepting parental support as a child, I had implicitly agreed to a reciprocal obligation to support my sister. Linda took notes calmly, occasionally squeezing my arm when outrageous claims were made. When it was her turn, she rose with composed confidence. "Your Honor, this case has no basis in family law or contract law. Miss Collins was a minor child under her parents' care, which is a legal obligation parents voluntarily assume when they have children. Children do not contract to receive basic necessities from their parents." She methodically dismantled each argument, presenting documentation of my financial independence since age 16, tax returns, proof of self-financing my education, and bank records showing substantial assistance I had already provided. Far from taking from the family, Miss Collins has contributed over $15,000 to her parents and sister since she was 18, money she was under no legal obligation to provide. The judge reviewed the documents with interest. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, were you aware of these financial contributions from your daughter?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Those were gifts, not related to this matter." $15,000 in gifts seems quite generous from someone you are characterizing as selfish and unwilling to support family, Judge Wilson observed. My mother spoke for the first time. "That money was nothing compared to what Emma needs. Amanda has a good job and just bought a house. She clearly has resources she is withholding." The judge turned to me. "Miss Collins, what is your current financial situation after purchasing your home?" With Linda's nod, I explained my careful budgeting, years of saving, current mortgage. "I am not wealthy, Your Honor. I worked multiple jobs through college, paid off my student loans, and saved for years to afford a modest home. I simply cannot afford to pay for another person's entire education without jeopardizing my own financial security." Judge Wilson nodded thoughtfully, then turned back to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, what financial planning did you do for your younger daughter's education?" My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We expected scholarships would cover most costs," my father finally admitted. "Emma is very talented." "And did you not make the same expectation for your elder daughter's education?" the judge pressed. "Amanda was always independent," my mother said dismissively. "She made her own way." Because I was given no choice, I interjected immediately, regretting breaking protocol. The judge gave me a measured look, but didn't reprimand me. Instead, she directed her next question to my parents. "Did you contribute financially to Miss Collins's college education?" "We could not afford to at the time," my father replied. "Yet you expected her to afford her sister's education now." Judge Wilson's tone made her skepticism clear. The proceedings continued with more testimony. My parents' lawyer tried to frame it as a family dispute where the court should enforce fairness. Linda emphasized the legal autonomy of adult children and the absence of any contractual obligation. As arguments wound down, The courtroom door opened quietly, and Emma slipped in, taking a seat in the back. Our eyes met, and I saw a mixture of embarrassment and determination. After final statements, Judge Wilson called a 15-minute recess. As we waited, Emma approached. "Can I speak to the judge?" she asked Linda. "About the fact that I never asked for any of this and don't want Amanda to pay for my education this way." Linda explained the judge might not allow it, but advised Emma to stay close. When Judge Wilson returned, she surprised everyone by calling Emma forward. "I understand you are Emma Collins, the younger sister whose education is at the center of this dispute. Do you wish to make a statement?" Emma stood nervously. "Yes, Your Honor. I want to make clear that I never asked my parents to sue my sister. I did not know about this lawsuit until recently. I would never want Amanda to be forced to pay for my education, especially not by giving up her home that she worked so hard to buy." My mother made a small noise of protest, which the judge silenced with a stern look. Emma continued, gaining confidence. "Amanda has always helped me when she could. She helped me apply for scholarships and financial aid. She taught me how to budget and manage money, skills our parents never taught either of us. I have options for continuing my education without taking anything from my sister." Judge Wilson thanked Emma, then delivered her ruling. "Having reviewed all evidence and testimony, I find the plaintiff's claim wholly without merit. There is no legal basis for forcing an adult child to finance a sibling's education, regardless of any perceived moral obligation. Furthermore, the evidence clearly shows that Miss Amanda Collins has already provided substantial financial support to her family over the years, far beyond any reasonable expectation." She addressed my parents directly. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, the court is troubled by your apparent different treatment of your daughters. You seem to have expected financial independence from one while assuming ongoing support for the other. This is not a matter for legal remedy, but rather family counseling." The judge dismissed the case. Then, in a final, unexpected move, she ordered my parents to pay my legal fees, stating their lawsuit was frivolous and potentially vexatious. As the courtroom began to clear, I remained seated, overwhelmed by the finality. The legal battle was over, but the emotional damage felt irreparable. My parents left without speaking to me, their rigid backs and quickened pace conveying their anger. Emma approached tentatively. "Amanda, I am so sorry about all of this." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "Can we talk? Maybe get coffee or something?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further. Whatever came next, nothing in our family relationships would ever be the same. The lawsuit had forced a confrontation with decades of dysfunction that could no longer be ignored or excused. As Linda gathered our materials, she offered a gentle observation. "Family estrangement is painful, Amanda, but sometimes it's necessary for healing to begin. You have legally established your right to boundaries. Now you can start the process of emotional boundaries as well." Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, grief, and, surprisingly, hope. For the first time in my life, I had publicly stood up for myself against my parents' expectations and demands. The victory felt hollow, given the circumstances, but it represented a crucial first step toward a healthier future. The days following the court hearing passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. Relief that the legal threat was gone, mixed with profound sadness about my family. I took a week off work to process it all, spending quiet days in the house that had become both sanctuary and battleground. I didn't hear from my parents, nor did I expect to. The courtroom had made explicit what had been implicit for years. Our relationship was fundamentally broken, built on obligation rather than love, expectation rather than acceptance. The lawsuit hadn't created this dysfunction, but merely exposed it in the harshest light. Linda had recommended continuing therapy, advice I took seriously. Dr. Russell helped me understand that grief for a relationship that never existed is still valid grief. "You are mourning the parents you deserved, but never had," she explained. "That loss is real, even if the relationship itself was unhealthy." We worked on internal boundaries, the emotional counterpart to the legal ones. I learned to recognize and challenge the voice of guilt that had been instilled in me since childhood, the belief that I was selfish for having my own needs and wants. 2 weeks after court, Emma and I met for coffee. It was awkward at first, years of family dynamics creating an invisible barrier. I moved out of mom and dad's house, she said, once the small talk ran out. I'm staying with my friend Sophia until I figure things out. Are you still in school? I asked. She nodded. I reduced my course load and got a job at the campus bookstore. It'll take me longer, but I'll get there eventually. I also applied for additional scholarships, like you suggested. I'm proud of you, Emma, I said, meaning it. Taking control of your own path isn't easy. I had a good example, she replied, meeting my eyes directly. I always admired how independent you were, even though I didn't understand until recently that it wasn't by choice. That conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship between us, one based on mutual respect, not the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered. Emma began to share her struggles and triumphs with me as a peer, not the favored child seeking handouts. As months passed, I slowly rebuilt my life around the truth, rather than family mythology. My home, now truly mine, became a real haven. I painted walls, planted a small garden, gradually furnished rooms with pieces that brought me joy. Each improvement felt like an affirmation of my right to create security for myself. Work provided another source of stability. Michael, understanding the crisis I'd weathered, offered me additional responsibilities, leading to another promotion. The increased income allowed me to start a modest investment portfolio, furthering my goal of long-term financial security. Jessica remained a steadfast friend. You know what amazes me most about you, she said during a Saturday spent helping me install kitchen shelves. Your capacity for joy despite everything. You never became bitter. Her observation surprised me, as I hadn't recognized it myself. But she was right. Despite the dysfunction, I hadn't allowed it to define my entire worldview. I still found pleasure in small things, still believed in the possibility of healthy relationships. Inspired by my journey, I started a blog about financial independence for young adults from difficult family backgrounds. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments poured in from people sharing similar experiences. What began as a personal outlet evolved into an online support community with regular video chats and resource sharing. Through this platform, I connected with others who understood the particular challenges of building stability without family support. We discussed practical matters, but also emotional issues like setting boundaries and managing guilt. The community became an unexpected source of healing, reminder that shared experience diminishes isolation. 6 months after the court case, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. It sat unopened on my counter for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. Amanda, it began. The past months have given me time to reflect on our relationship and my role as your mother. While I still believe families should support each other, I recognize now that we placed unfair burdens on you from a young age. This realization has been painful to acknowledge. The letter continued with an awkward but seemingly genuine attempt at apology, stopping short of taking full responsibility, but acknowledging mistakes. She requested a meeting to begin healing our family, a phrase that simultaneously triggered hope and skepticism. After discussing the letter with Dr. Russell, I agreed to meet my mother at a cafe near my office. The meeting was tense, uncomfortable. Your father still believes we were right, she admitted toward the end. But I miss having you in my life. I cannot return to the old dynamic, I told her firmly. Any relationship we have moving forward has to be based on mutual respect, not obligation. She nodded slowly. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I would like to try. This tentative reconnection was neither a fairy tale reconciliation nor a complete failure. Over subsequent months, my mother and I established a careful, limited relationship, meeting occasionally for coffee, conversations focused on neutral topics. My father remained distant, unwilling, or unable to acknowledge the damage done, though he stopped active hostile behavior. A year after buying my house, I hosted a small anniversary gathering. Emma attended, bringing her new boyfriend and a homemade cake. Jessica and Tyler came, along with colleagues who had supported me during the lawsuit. My mother declined the invitation with a polite note, perhaps understanding that full family reconciliation, if it ever came, was still far in the future. As I looked around at the people who had chosen to be in my life, who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide, I recognized the profound shift in my understanding of family. Family was not merely biological connection or obligation, but a community built on mutual support and genuine care. The house that had become a point of contention was now unquestionably mine. Not just legally, but emotionally. Each mortgage payment felt like an affirmation. Each home improvement, a declaration of my right to create stability for myself. The most valuable lesson from this painful journey was understanding the difference between guilt and responsibility. For years, I had carried guilt about not meeting my parents' expectations, about prioritizing my needs, about setting boundaries. Therapy and experience had taught me that responsibility to oneself is not selfishness, but self-preservation. That boundaries are not walls, but healthy definitions of where one person ends and another begins. I still had moments of doubt and sadness, days when I mourned the family relationships I would never have. But these episodes became less frequent and less intense as I built a life aligned with my own values, rather than imposed expectations. As I stand in my kitchen today, preparing for another day in the home I fought to protect, I realize that true freedom comes not from external validation, but from internal conviction. My parents may never fully understand or accept my choices, but their understanding is no longer necessary for my peace. This house is more than wooden beams and mortgage payments. It represents my right to define my own path, to establish healthy boundaries, and to create security on my own terms. The journey here was longer and harder than it should have been, but that only makes the achievement more meaningful. What would you do if faced with a choice between family expectations and your own well-being? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Thank you for listening. Take care.